The day Clara received the notice to return to the city was also the day her fiancé, Sam, married her younger sister. Her mother looked at her awkwardly and said, "Clara, I'm sorry. You were delayed in returning to the city, and our family couldn't just let Sam wait forever. That's why we married your sister off to him. Why don't you just settle for Sam's older brother, Harrison?" In her previous life, Clara had thought Sam's older brother was an honest and simple man, so she had agreed to the arrangement. However, after they got married, she discovered that he was anything but honest and simple. He was clearly an absolute scumbag. Even before marrying her, he had been having an affair with Widow Jenkins from his workplace. After Clara married into the family, not only did he not restrain himself, but he blatantly brought the woman home. He had even told her, "You're a leftover woman. The fact that I'm willing to marry you at all is already elevating your worth." Unable to endure it any longer, Clara demanded a divorce, but he locked her in the house and abused her. Ultimately, driven to madness, she set fire to his house, burying herself in the sea of flames. Hi everyone. Ever been pressured into a bad marriage just to please your family? Watch how Clara bravely says no, exposes the villains, and completely reclaims her life. When she opened her eyes again, Clara found herself back on the day of her younger sister's wedding. Hearing her mother once again tell her to accept the marriage to Sam's older brother, Clara flatly refused. "Mom, I'm not talking nonsense. I don't care for Harrison, and I don't want to just settle." "Clara, what the hell are you talking about?" Her father slammed his pipe against the edge of the bed. "Sam has already exchanged vows with your sister. What more do you want? Harrison being willing to marry you is already giving you a way out. You're a girl who's been stuck out in the country for years, past your prime. Other than their family, who else would be willing to marry you?" Clara sat on the edge of the bed, her fingernails digging deep into her palms. In her past life, on this exact day, she had thought that since Sam had waited for her for 5 years, she had indeed held him back. Since his family still wanted to provide her with a place to belong, she had considered it the utmost kindness and nodded in agreement. Yet, just 3 months after the wedding, she caught Harrison rolling around in their marital bed with the widow who sold warehouse goods. Clara demanded an explanation, but he simply grabbed her by the collar and sneered, "You're a spinster pushing 30. The fact that I brought you into my home is already doing you a favor. Don't go looking for trouble." Hearing those words back then, she immediately asked for a divorce. In response, he locked her in their abandoned woodshed for 3 days without food. Starving to the point of dizziness, she crawled to the crack in the door, begging him to let her out. Meanwhile, he and Widow Jenkins were laughing and chatting happily in the next room, eating stewed meat and drinking liquor. Eventually, Clara went mad. She fumbled for a matchbox and set fire to the pile of dry firewood. As the flames caught onto her clothes, only one thought remained in her mind. If she could do it all over again, even if she were blind, she would never agree to this marriage. Now that she had been given a second chance at life, how could she possibly jump back into that fire pit? "Clara, why are you being so stubborn?" Her mother wiped her eyes, her tone softening. "I know you feel wronged and upset, but you can't blame Sam for this. His family was rushing the marriage, and we couldn't just keep them waiting forever. Besides, I've already asked around about Harrison. He's a workshop supervisor at the local meatpacking plant, making a good salary of several dozen dollars a month. If you live with him, your life won't be bad at all." "Mom, I'm not upset," Clara said calmly. "I genuinely don't care for Harrison, and I don't want to marry him. It has nothing to do with anything else." Just as she finished speaking, light footsteps suddenly echoed outside the door, followed by the coquettish voice of her younger sister, Nora. Nora's voice rang out. "Mom, Clara, all the guests have arrived. Sam is rushing to exchange the vows. Clara, please don't resent me. I had no other choice either. Mom and Dad said we couldn't let his family call off the wedding, so Clara looked up toward the door. Today, Nora was wearing a red Dacron blouse, her hair braided into 2 smooth, shiny pigtails. Her eyes were red-rimmed, making her look incredibly aggrieved, as if Clara had forced her to marry Sam. In her previous life, Clara had been fooled by this pitiful act, thinking her sister had only married Sam for her sake and for the sake of their family. Clara had even stuffed all the food and fabric ration coupons she had saved up for years into Nora's hands. But she found out later that Nora and Sam had been having an affair all along. The only reason Clara hadn't received her notice to return to the city was because the two of them had been pulling strings behind her back so they could legitimately get married. "I don't resent you," Clara said, standing up and brushing off her clothes. "I'm giving Sam to you. Just live a good life with him from now on." Nora froze. She probably hadn't expected Clara to be so calm. She opened her mouth to say something, but Clara squeezed past her and walked out into the courtyard. "Clara, where are you going?" her father called after her. I'm going to find the manager at my old workplace to see if my job can still be arranged, Clara replied without looking back. But just as she reached the end of the alley, she saw a man standing there in a tunic suit. This man was none other than her honest and simple husband from her past life, Harrison. Seeing Clara walk out, Harrison scratched his head and said, "Clara, I know you still have feelings for my younger brother, but he's already married your sister. You need to face reality. I genuinely like you. If you marry me, I'll give you my entire monthly salary. I'll even do all the household chores. I promise to treat you well for the rest of my life." Clara stopped in her tracks, looking at Harrison with a calm expression. In her past life, it was precisely because of this seemingly honest demeanor that she had agreed. But what happened after that? Right after the wedding, he brought Widow Jenkins into their bridal chamber. He took Clara's dowry to tailor a new Dacron shirt for the widow and berated Clara, calling her an unwanted spinster, claiming that marrying him was a blessing she must have earned over 3 lifetimes. If she didn't have pressing matters to attend to right now, she would have loved nothing more than to slap him a few times. "Harrison," Clara looked at him with utmost seriousness. "I stopped liking your brother a long time ago, and I am not going to marry you, either. Go home. And by the way, tell your family that I do not agree to this marriage. Tell them to stop dreaming." The smile on Harrison's face stiffened. As if he hadn't heard clearly, he frowned and asked, "What are you talking about?" "Clara, stop throwing a tantrum. This matter is already settled." "Settled? How is it settled?" Clara interrupted him. "That was decided between you and my parents, not with me. We are in an era of free marriage now. What, do you all still want to play those old feudal tricks?" With that said, she squeezed past him and headed out of the alley. He reached out to grab her, but she leaned away and dodged his grasp. In the end, he could only stand there frozen, watching her leave her family's old home without once looking back. Her work situation went smoother than she had expected. Previously, Clara had been a machine operator at the textile factory. Because she had been sent down to the countryside, she had retained her position on the payroll, but her salary had been suspended. Fortunately, her old supervisor was still there. Hearing that she had returned to the city, he immediately agreed to let her start working the next day. Stepping out of the textile factory, the heavy boulder pressing down on Clara's chest was finally lifted. With a job, she could support herself. This time, she finally didn't have to rely on her family's charity or read their moods anymore. On her way home, Clara happened to pass by the restaurant where Sam's family was holding the wedding reception. The band was playing, horns blowing and drums beating, creating an incredibly lively atmosphere. Clara heard the people nearby gossiping. Wasn't the one engaged the eldest daughter of the family? How come it changed to the youngest? I heard the eldest daughter was stuck out in the countryside and didn't come back, so they swapped in the youngest daughter. Clara walked past them expressionlessly, too lazy to explain and having no desire to join the festivities. In her past life, before returning to the city, Luke, the production captain's nephew, had told her that her younger sister and the 2 brothers from Sam's family were up to no good, warning her to be careful. But at that time, she hadn't paid any attention. It wasn't until her death that she remembered Luke's words. He had been absolutely right. Unfortunately, by then, it was all too late. Given a second chance, she naturally had to do everything in her power to stay far away from these scumbags. Perhaps because she was too lost in thought, she unknowingly wandered into the middle of the road and was almost hit by a bicycle. "Ah!" Clara let out a scream, so startled she nearly fell to the ground. But the moment she looked up and saw the man on the bicycle, she froze in surprise. She never expected it to be Luke. Seeing Clara, Luke's eyes suddenly lit up. He parked his bike to the side, his tone full of surprise. "Clara, you're back? How is it? Did you get your job situation sorted out?" Looking into his sincere eyes, her heart warmed. In her previous life, after she was locked up by Harrison, Luke was the one who realized something was wrong and rushed to Harrison's house to rescue her. At that time, she had been starving to the brink of death. It was him who took her to the hospital and paid her medical bills, saving her life. It was just that later on, the more she thought about it, the more resentful she became, which led her to return to Harrison's house and set the fire. My job is all sorted out. I start tomorrow," Clara said, sniffing slightly. "That's good." Luke nodded, his gaze lingering on her face. Noticing that she seemed upset, he frowned. "Did your family say something again?" "Right. About them trying to force you to marry Harrison. You didn't agree, did you?" "I didn't agree." Clara shook her head, looking at him. "I'm not going to marry him. Don't worry." Hearing her say this, Luke laughed, revealing a row of straight, white teeth, his eyes curving into crescents. "I knew you were a smart one. That guy Harrison might look honest, but he's actually full of schemes. Not long ago, I heard old Mr. Carter from the meatpacking plant say that he's been messing around with Widow Jenkins for years. It's just that no one dares to expose them. If you married him, you'd be jumping straight into a fire pit. I know, that's why I didn't agree. Clara smiled. That's good then. Luke got back on his bike and patted the rear seat. I'm heading back too. It's on the way, let me give you a ride. Okay, thank you. Clara hesitated for a moment before sitting sideways on the back seat. Luke pedaled steadily, and before long, he had dropped her off at the entrance of her alley. She got off the bike and was about to thank him, but he beat her to it, taking a piece of paper from his pocket and handing it to her. This is my work address and the phone number for my dorm. If your family tries to force you again, or if Harrison gives you a hard time, just come find me. I'll be there. Clara took the paper, clutching it tightly in her hand. A warm feeling spread through her. She nodded, said her thanks, and turned to walk down the narrow alley. When she got home, the house was empty. They must have all gone to the wedding banquet, which gave her some welcome peace and quiet. Clara unpacked the belongings she had brought back from the countryside and settled them into the west bedroom where she used to live. Just as she finished cleaning up, her parents returned. Nora and Sam came back with them as well. Sam was holding a string of firecrackers in his hand. When he saw Clara, his expression became somewhat unnatural. He cleared his throat and said, "Clara, you're back? About today? I'm sorry." "There's nothing to be sorry about," Clara said indifferently as she wiped the table. "As long as the two of you live a good life from now on, that's better than anything." Sam froze, seemingly not expecting her to be so calm. He opened his mouth to say something, but Nora was faster and interrupted him. "Clara, the braised pork at the wedding banquet today was delicious. I brought a piece back for you. Here, eat it." Saying this, she placed an oil paper package on the table. If it had been her past life, Clara would definitely have been deeply moved, thinking that her younger sister at least still cared about her in her heart. But now, looking at Nora's smug expression, she only found it ridiculous. She wasn't thinking of Clara at all. She was clearly showing off. She was showing off that she had managed to marry Sam, showing off that she had stolen everything from Clara. "Thanks, but I'm not hungry," Clara said without looking at her, continuing to unpack her things. Nora's hand froze in midair, and the smile on her face faded a bit. She stammered, "Clara, are you still mad at me? I really didn't mean to do it." At the time, Dad said Sam's family was rushing the wedding so much that there was no other way but for me to take your place. I already said I'm not mad. Clara stood up straight and looked at her. "Nora! Stop putting on that conflicted act in front of me, as if I forced you to marry Sam. Do I need to spell out exactly what you're thinking in that head of yours?" Nora was so choked by her words that she stood there, stunned, her face turning pale and then green. Seeing this, Sam frowned. He reached out and wrapped his arm around Nora's shoulders, his tone revealing obvious dissatisfaction toward Clara. "Clara, Nora was kind enough to bring food for you. What kind of attitude is that? It's true that I wronged you by marrying Nora, but my family has already arranged for my brother to marry you. What's the point of you making such a fuss?" Looking at Sam's self-righteous expression, Clara almost burst out laughing. So they had been sneaking around behind her back and trying to push her into a fire pit, yet she was supposed to be grateful and thank them? "For my own good?" Clara smirked. "Sam, maybe others don't know what kind of person your brother is, but don't tell me you don't know. For my own good? Have you no shame?" Sam was scolded to the point of being speechless. He probably hadn't expected Clara to know his brother's true colors so well. It took him a few seconds before he stiffened his neck and yelled, "Clara, don't spout nonsense. What's wrong with my brother? What grounds do you have to say that about him? Furthermore, if it weren't for Nora's sake, do you think our family would even want to marry you? Who wants your family to marry me?" Clara crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe, her voice as cold as ice. "You two brother-son twists the truth, while the other hides a mistress and tries to trick me into marrying him. You conspired together, treating me like a fool to be led by the nose. Did you really think I couldn't see through it? I'll tell you straight right here today, even if I die, I will not agree to this marriage with Harrison, so stop making me sick." "You!" Sam was so furious, his hands shook. Seeing this, Nora tugged at his sleeve, tears welling up in her eyes. "Sam, don't yell at her. It's my fault. It's all my fault. If you want to blame someone, blame me." "Nora, stop playing the victim here." Clara couldn't even be bothered to watch her act. "If you want to cry, go outside and cry. Don't cry in my room. It's bad luck, like you're attending a funeral. Who are you putting on this show for?" At this point, her father stomped his foot in anger, pointing right at her nose and scolding. "Clara, are you crazy? Sam and Nora just got home today, and you're already causing a scene like this. Do you want all the neighbors to treat our family like a laughingstock? Let me tell you, Whether you agree to this marriage or not, you will agree. Tomorrow, I will have their family come over to perform the rites, and on the 8th of next month, you will be married. Dad. Clara looked at her father, her heart turning colder by the second. I am your biological daughter. Are you really that eager to push me into a fire pit? Have you genuinely not heard a single whisper about Harrison and Widow Jenkins? Aren't you afraid that if I marry into their family, I'll die there? Hearing this, her mother's face changed. She unconsciously looked at Sam. Sam, is this true? Does Harrison really have something going on with that Widow Jenkins? Sam's eyes darted around, trying to deny it stubbornly. Auntie, there's no such thing, Sam said. It's all just outsiders spouting nonsense. My brother was simply being kind and helping that widow move some things. People saw it a few times and started spinning tales. So, spinning tales? Clara laughed coldly. At the meatpacking plant, who doesn't know that Widow Jenkins's warehouse goods stall was secured for her by Harrison? If it's just spinning tales, then on what grounds are the factory's scraps brought to her place for free every month? Furthermore, whenever Widow Jenkins has free time, she goes to Harrison's dorm to wash his blankets for him. Is this also called spinning tales? Clara knew all of these things from her past life, after she had married him, and heard it from the neighborhood gossips. Sam's face turned pale, his mouth hung open, unable to utter a word. Nora bit her lip, her tears falling even more heavily. Clara, even if that were true, it's all in the past. If you marry Harrison, he will definitely cut ties with Widow Jenkins. Why can't you just give him a chance? On what grounds should I give him a chance? Clara retorted. I'm not a garbage dump, where you can just shove any trash you want onto me. She took a step forward, glaring at her sister. Besides, what right do you have to force me to marry an older man who is entangled with a widow, just to be his second choice? Don't forget, you were the one who stole my fiancé, which is what caused this piece of trash to fall on my head in the first place. Questioned so fiercely by Clara, Nora took a step back and immediately threw herself into Sam's arms. Sam, look at her. She's still blaming me. Enough! Sam shielded Nora, glaring fiercely at Clara. Clara, don't be ungrateful. If my family really calls off this engagement, let's see who else would dare to marry you. Sam, do you really think I, Clara, grew up being scared of threats? Clara wasn't afraid in the slightest. At worst, I just won't marry for the rest of my life. In any case, it's better than marrying a scumbag. Furthermore, if the engagement is really called off, the ones who lose face won't be me, but your family. After all, your family changed the marriage arrangement first and then tried to force a scumbag on me. Even if we make a huge scene and take this to the neighborhood committee, I have nothing to fear. As soon as Clara finished speaking, Sam's face turned ghastly pale. The new society was currently promoting free marriage. If a huge scene was really made, his family would be the ones in the wrong, and they would certainly be the ones losing face. Moreover, Sam had just been promoted to an officer position and hadn't even passed his probationary period yet. How could he dare let this matter blow up? Just as Sam opened his mouth, intending to persuade Clara to calm down, a dry cough suddenly sounded from the doorway. Harrison, who knew how long he had been standing there, had a face as dark as the bottom of a pot. He walked in, swept his gaze around the room, and finally let his eyes rest on Clara. Clara, are you really not leaving me any way out? A way out? Clara didn't back down in the slightest as she looked at Harrison, who had suddenly appeared. What right do you have to demand that I leave you a way out? Based on your shady entanglement with a widow, or based on the fact that you're older and refuse to bathe? Harrison took a deep breath, as if trying to suppress his anger. There really is nothing between me and Widow Jenkins. It's all just outsiders talking nonsense. Can't you trust me just once? I guarantee that after we get married, I will definitely treat you well. I'll give you my full salary and do all the household chores. If you don't believe me, I can write a letter of guarantee. Forget the letter of guarantee, Clara said, crossing her arms. Keep it and give it to Widow Jenkins. I don't want it. If you want to get married that badly, wouldn't marrying Widow Jenkins solve the problem? Why do you insist on clinging to me? Harrison completely lost his facade, his neck turning bright red. Clara, don't push your luck. It's not like nobody wants me. The fact that I'm willing to marry you is already doing you a huge favor. Oh, then go find someone else to marry. I'm not stopping you. Clara rolled her eyes. Stop spouting nonsense. I will never marry you. Just give it up, Clara said. Harrison was so infuriated by her that his whole body trembled. He pointed at her, unable to speak for a long time. Finally, he flicked his sleeve and sneered, Fine, don't you regret this? With that, he turned and stormed off. Seeing this, Sam knew that the marriage arrangement had completely gone up in smoke. He glared at Clara, then supported a sobbing Nora as they left. The room was finally quiet. but the matter was clearly not over yet, because she still had to get past her parents. Her father was so furious that he sat on the edge of the bed, pointing at her and scolding, "You wretched girl, you've completely offended their family. How are you going to survive in this city from now on? If you know what's good for you, go apologize to Harrison right now and marry him obediently. Otherwise, I'll break your legs. Even if you break my legs, I won't marry him," Clara said coldly, remaining seated. "If you two can't accommodate me, I'll move out and rent a place tomorrow. Either way, I absolutely refuse to marry him. You. Her father was so enraged he could barely breathe, nearly passing out. Her mother hurriedly rubbed his chest to soothe him, crying as she did. "Clara, why are you so stubborn? You're a girl. How can you move out without getting married? Wouldn't that make us a laughingstock? Just listen to your mother and get married." "I won't marry. Even if I die, I won't do it," Clara said. She stood up and turned to leave. Her father blocked the door, cursing loudly, but she ignored him. She squeezed past him and headed straight for the textile factory's dormitory. She figured that hiding out at her workplace would keep her out of trouble, but she hadn't expected the thick-skinned Harrison to actually track her down at her workplace. Early the next morning, as soon as she came downstairs from the dormitory, she saw Harrison blocking her way. Seeing her, he rushed over and grabbed her arm. "Clara, come with me. I have something to say to you." Clara shook off his hand, raising her voice an octave. "What are you doing? Acting like a hooligan in broad daylight? Get lost." As soon as she spoke, her colleagues at the textile factory immediately looked over, pointing and whispering. Harrison's face turned beet red, and he lowered his voice. "Stop yelling. I came today to talk about our marriage. Don't make a scene. I've told you 1,000 times, I am not marrying you. Can't you understand human speech?" Clara crossed her arms and glared at him coldly. "If you keep harassing me, I'll go to your superiors and ask them why a workshop supervisor at the meatpacking plant has so much free time that he comes to harass a female comrade every single day." Harrison's expression shifted. He had worked incredibly hard to secure that supervisor position. If she really made a scene in front of his superiors, it definitely wouldn't end well for him. His face turned pale, then green, as he gritted his teeth and lowered his voice. "Clara, don't push your luck. If you really take this to the leadership, as an educated youth who just returned to the city, it won't end well for you either." "Is that so?" Clara raised an eyebrow and deliberately raised her voice. "Everyone, come look at this. Supervisor Harrison from the meatpacking plant ran over to our textile factory to force me into marriage. He's secretly entangled with Widow Jenkins, who sells warehouse goods, yet he's trying to force me to marry him. What kind of logic is this?" The textile factory was already crowded in the morning. With her shout, a crowd immediately gathered around them. People pointed at Harrison, gossiping endlessly. "So it's him. I heard that a supervisor at the meatpacking plant was having an affair with a widow. I didn't expect it to be him. Top? Oh my. He's already hooking up with a widow, and he's still forcing someone else's daughter to marry him. That is truly wicked." "That's right, I heard about this," another person chimed in. "They say it was originally his younger brother who was engaged to this girl, but he ended up hooking up with her younger sister. So, they tried to force the older brother onto her instead. What era are we in that they're still playing these kinds of tricks?" Harrison's face turned purple from the gossip. He clenched his fists, standing there completely paralyzed, unable to advance or retreat. Just then, the factory's security guards, having heard the commotion, rushed over. Seeing the situation, they grabbed Harrison and dragged him right out the gate. Before leaving, he shot Clara a vicious glare, his eyes looking as if he wanted to swallow her alive. Clara simply shrugged at him and went to find her supervisor to report for duty. She thought that after this incident, Harrison would finally restrain himself. As it turned out, when she went to the cafeteria for lunch and had just found a seat to set down her food tray, Widow Jenkins tracked her down. Wearing a floral blouse, her waist swaying like a water snake, the widow plopped down directly opposite Clara. She cast a sidelong glance and asked, "Are you Clara?" Clara briefly looked up at her, then ignored her and went back to eating. The freshly steamed white flour buns paired with the braised eggplant and soy sauce were delicious. Clara saw no reason to let a scumbag ruin her meal. Seeing that Clara didn't say anything, Widow Jenkins didn't get angry. Instead, she poked at the eggplant on Clara's plate with her chopsticks, her tone sour. "Tisk tisk, dressed so neatly, but it's a pity your ambitions are higher than the sky while your fate is as thin as paper. How old are you now, and you're still being this picky?" Clara set her chopsticks down, wiped her mouth, and looked up at her. "If you have something to say, spit it out. I'm eating, and I don't have the time to sit here bickering with you." Widow Jenkins hadn't expected Clara to be so blunt. She froze for a moment before letting out a meaningful smile. "I came here today to talk about Harrison. Stop playing hard to get. As long as you agree to marry him, how about I give you $500? Hearing this, Clara was stunned. She truly hadn't expected Widow Jenkins to be willing to pay out of her own pocket just to get her to marry Harrison. Clara raised an eyebrow. You're offering to pay my dowry for me, Jenkins? What exactly are you plotting? Widow Jenkins slammed her hand on the table. Never mind what I'm plotting. You're a leftover spinster pushing 30. The fact that Harrison is willing to marry you is already a blessing. I'm even compensating you with money. What more could you possibly be dissatisfied with? There's plenty I'm dissatisfied with, Clara said, leaning back in her chair and crossing her arms over her chest. You answer me first. Why are you so stubbornly determined to force me to marry Harrison? Widow Jenkins bit her lip, hesitating for a long time before finally lowering her voice. Fine, I'll tell you the truth. I won't lie to you. The old lady of his family has already said that as long as Harrison can marry a wife this year, she will transfer the deed to the 3-room blue brick and tile house out in the country to his name. That house is right next to the co-op store, and word is it's going to be demolished for redevelopment soon. That's why I came to negotiate with you. Hearing Widow Jenkins's explanation, Clara let out a laugh. Now she fully understood why Harrison was so obsessively determined to marry her. It turned out these two had been scheming for a long time, treating her as nothing more than a convenient tool. Oh, so that's how it is, Clara nodded. But I'm sorry, I'm still not marrying him. Widow Jenkins suddenly grew anxious. Clara, don't be ungrateful. $500 isn't a small amount. Could you even save up $500 in your entire lifetime? $500 isn't small, but I find this money dirty, Clara replied. She looked straight at her and added, besides, wouldn't everything be resolved if you just married him yourself? Why spend the money unnecessarily? Widow Jenkins's face turned deathly pale. If she could have legitimately married him, why would she have waited until today? It was simply because his family found it shameful for him to marry a widow and absolutely forbade Harrison from bringing her into the family. Clara's words had hit a nerve. The widow immediately went crazy. She plopped down on the ground, slapping her thighs and wailing. Oh my God! Everyone! Come look at this! This wretched girl, Clara, is insulting me for no reason. I was kind enough to play matchmaker for her. If she doesn't agree, fine, but she shouldn't curse at people. Where is the justice in this world? A leftover spinster who can't get anyone to marry her, putting on such high and mighty airs. The cafeteria, which was already full of people eating, immediately turned to look. Incessant whispers and gossip broke out. Clara frowned. She was just about to stand up and drag the woman outside when she heard a cold voice ring out from the doorway. What's going on here? Clara looked up and saw Luke. He was wearing a blue worker's uniform. He probably happened to be there on business, heard the commotion, and walked in. As soon as he entered, his eyes landed on Clara. Seeing that she was fine, he then turned to look at Widow Jenkins, who was throwing a tantrum on the floor. Seeing Luke dressed neatly and looking like an official, Widow Jenkins cried out, Comrade, please judge this for me. I was kind enough to play matchmaker for this girl, Clara. Not only did she refuse, but she also insulted me. Matchmaking? Luke raised an eyebrow and took 2 steps forward. What kind of matchmaking? Harrison is secretly entangled with you, yet he sends you here to persuade Clara to marry him. Is this what you call matchmaking? The moment Luke finished speaking, the surrounding gossip grew even louder. Everyone pointed at Widow Jenkins, whispering among themselves. She immediately froze, never expecting this man to know everything. Suddenly stammering, she retorted, You're talking nonsense. Who are you? What right do you have to meddle in our business? Who I am isn't important. What's important is that this is the textile factory's workers' cafeteria, not a place for you to cause a scene. Luke pulled out his work ID and flashed it. It was then that Clara noticed he had transferred to become an official at the city's Light Industry Bureau, specifically managing the affairs of these factories. If you don't leave right now, I'll take you to the police station and report you for disrupting the normal operations of the factory. You wouldn't want to be arrested and locked up, would you? Hearing the words police station, Widow Jenkins was so frightened that she immediately scrambled up from the ground. Pointing a vicious finger at Clara, she hissed, Clara, you just wait, I won't let you off. With that, she lowered her head, squeezed through the crowd, and ran away. Seeing that the show was over, the bystanders also dispersed. Luke walked over to Clara. Looking at her half-eaten tray of food, he frowned. Is the food not good? Come on, I'll take you out to eat. A new meat bun shop just opened at the end of the alley over there, and they smell amazing. Looking at him, Clara felt a warmth in her heart. She shook her head and said, No, it's okay. I'm full. Thank you for helping me again. Why are you being so polite with me? Luke smiled, revealing his straight, white teeth. Don't let this bother you. If they dare come looking for trouble again, just tell me, and I'll deal with them. With that, he turned and left. Clara had thought that after this incident, Harrison would surely find someone else to torment. But she never expected that, in order to force her to submit, he would start spreading rumors that she and Luke were having an illicit affair. He even got Sam and Nora to bear false witness. At this point, Clara truly couldn't endure it anymore. They could slander her, but they absolutely could not slander Luceth, only person who had been good to her in both her past life and this one. Since that was the case, if they wanted to dig their own graves, she would gladly oblige them. Having been reborn and armed with the foresight of her memories, wouldn't taking down these pests be incredibly simple? Clara went directly to a nearby post office and made an anonymous phone call to the disciplinary office at the meatpacking plant. On the phone, she didn't say much else. She only reported that workshop supervisor Harrison had been abusing his position for a long time, taking public scrap materials and giving them for free to his mistress, Widow Jenkins. Relying on this free source of materials for her warehouse goods business, Widow Jenkins had made nearly $1,000 in just half a year. All of this constituted the embezzlement of state property. After completing this step, Clara immediately returned to the textile factory. Taking advantage of the afternoon workers' meeting, she suddenly stood up and addressed the entire room, including the factory director and the union leaders. "Someone is spreading rumors that I am having an illicit affair," she announced, "ruining my reputation and damaging the reputation of another comrade. I demand that the factory step forward to clear my name and find the person spreading these rumors." As soon as she finished speaking, the entire hall erupted. The factory director, who had been looking for a prime example to rectify the factory's discipline, realized that since Clara was a returning veteran worker, handling this matter well would be the perfect way to establish his authority. He immediately paused the meeting and told her to sit down and explain everything slowly. Clara wasn't panicked. She recounted everything from beginning to end, how Harrison had tried to force her into marriage, and how Widow Jenkins had come to the cafeteria to cause a scene. She also exposed how Harrison, furious that she refused to marry him, had spread rumors of an illicit affair between her and Luke from the Light Industry Bureau. Even their conspiracy to trick her into marriage just to secure the deed to their country house was brought completely to light. The head of the union, a straightforward and fiercely protective woman, was so furious after hearing this that she slammed her hand on the table. "This is outrageous. What era are we in, that they are still playing these forced marriage tricks? He's dirty himself, yet he tries to drag an innocent girl through the mud. This kind of person must be severely punished." With that said, she immediately called the Light Industry Bureau. Over there, they had also just received a tip-off from the masses. After cross-referencing the information, they discovered that the rumor-mongering was indeed inextricably linked to Harrison. Furthermore, Luke was originally an official in charge of disciplinary inspection. He was a clean and upright person. How could there possibly be anything shady going on between him and Clara? To clear Luke's name, the Light Industry Bureau dispatched 2 comrades directly. Along with personnel from the textile factory, they went straight to Harrison and Sam's house. When they walked through the door, Nora's face turned ghastly pale. She tried to put on a pitiful act, accusing Clara of causing a scene, but she was immediately choked off by the union head with a single sentence. What girl would use her own reputation as a joke? The union head continued, "Furthermore, we have already verified it. It is Harrison who is having an illicit affair and slandering others. As a younger sister, you didn't stand by your older sister, but instead helped an outsider. You truly have no sense of shame." Clara stood to the side, watching Nora's face turn from white to red, feeling not a single ripple of emotion in her heart. Nora had stolen her fiancé and stood by watching her jump into a fire pit without saying a word. Now, whatever she had to endure was well-deserved. Not long after, Sam brought Harrison back from the meatpacking plant. The disciplinary personnel from their plant followed along as well. As soon as they entered, they announced that Harrison had indeed abused his position to siphon public materials to Widow Jenkins over a long period. The evidence was irrefutable. His position as workshop supervisor was revoked, and he was placed on probation at the factory, with his salary reduced by 3 pay grades. Sam, who had just been promoted to deputy section chief, was also implicated for helping his brother spread the rumors and lost his position entirely. He was so furious that he turned on Harrison right then and there. The 2 brothers got into a screaming match in the middle of the courtyard. Nora tried to intervene and persuade them to stop, but Sam gave her a hard shove, sending her tumbling into the doorway. The old matriarch of their family, looking at the chaotic scene unfolding before her eyes, couldn't catch her breath and fainted on the spot. The house instantly descended into chaos, a mess of crying and screaming. The leaders who had accompanied Clara showed no sympathy at all. After announcing the disciplinary decision, they led Clara away. As she stepped outside, the setting sun was casting slanted rays at the end of the alley, where Luke was standing and waiting for her. Seeing her come out, he hurried over and asked, "You weren't scared, were you? You really are something. You were being slandered, and you didn't even tell me, choosing to bear it all on your own. Do you know how worried I was about you?" Clara looked at his eyes filled with worry, and her nose suddenly stung. In her previous life, even when she was dying, she hadn't shed this many tears. Now, being cherished in someone's palm, she couldn't hold them back anymore. She shook her head, then nodded, saying, "It's all taken care of. They can't spout nonsense anymore." Luke smiled and reached out to brush the dust off her clothes, his movements natural and gentle. "I knew you would handle it well. Let's go. I'll take you to get those meat buns." After that incident, their family never came to harass Clara again. The textile factory cleared her name and arranged for her to become the deputy team leader of the machine operators, with a salary $5 higher than a regular worker. After her colleagues learned of Harrison's true colors, they all sympathized with Clara's situation, and no one gossiped maliciously anymore. Her work in the factory went incredibly smoothly. After half a month, her skills had returned to the level of proficiency she had before going down to the countryside, and the products she made were even more meticulous than those of many veteran workers. Clara's parents initially blamed her for offending that family, but after seeing her life getting better and better, they gradually fell silent and stopped saying things to force her into marriage. As for their family and Nora, after waking up, the old matriarch was paralyzed and bedridden. The family lost Sam's official salary and Harrison's supervisor income, and their lives immediately became impoverished. Hearing that Harrison had lost his position and that there was no longer a blue brick house to claim, Widow Jenkins packed up all her savings and left, marrying an old vegetable vendor in the suburbs. Harrison couldn't handle the blow. He drank every day, and whenever he got drunk, he would come home, smash things, and beat Nora. Sam didn't even bother to intervene because he had gone to a fortune teller who told him that the family's downfall was due to Nora bringing bad luck. He actually hoped his brother would beat Nora and drive her away for good. Nora had been spoiled since she was a child. How could she endure this kind of torment? She immediately divorced Sam and moved back to her parents' house. Every time she saw Clara, she would lower her head and walk around her, completely lacking her previous arrogance. The relationship between Clara and Luke also gradually progressed during this time. The day he confessed his feelings to her was right at the end of the alley where he had once dropped her off. Blushing, he said, "Clara, I've actually liked you ever since we were back in the countryside. I knew you were engaged then, so I didn't dare say anything. Now, I've finally waited until you're single. Are you willing to marry me?" Clara looked at the tiny beads of sweat on his temples and suddenly smiled, unable to hold back her falling tears. She nodded and said, "I will." Luke froze for a few seconds. After regaining his senses, he pulled her into a tight embrace, his voice trembling. "Clara, rest assured, I will treat you well for the rest of my life." The engagement day was set for the end of the month. Luke's parents were practical people. They gave Clara a full dowry of $188, bought 2 new sets of Dacron fabric, and made new blankets and bedding. Clara's parents looked a bit ashamed, seeing how properly the other family presented the engagement gifts. They repeatedly said they had wronged her in the past. They also returned the food and fabric ration coupons she had saved up, and finally added $50 as her dowry. Clara didn't refuse. These were things she rightfully deserved anyway. On the day Clara and Luke got married, they didn't throw a lavish party, only inviting relatives from both sides, and their close colleagues from the factory for an intimate meal. Luke had thoroughly cleaned the 1-bedroom apartment assigned by his unit, whitewashed the walls, and even built Clara a new 5-drawer dresser for her clothes. Clara stroked the smooth, polished surface of the dresser, remembering her past life. When she had married Harrison, his family couldn't even bear to make her a new blanket. It suddenly felt like a lifetime ago. A year later, Clara became pregnant. Luke was overjoyed and refused to let her lift a single finger. Every day, he changed the menu, buying different fruits and pastries for her. At that time, apples were quite expensive on the market, but every week he would ride his bicycle to an orchard in the suburbs to buy fresh apples, cutting them into small, bite-sized pieces and feeding them to her. Later, she gave birth to a pair of boy-girl twins. Luke held the 2 tiny babies, his arms so stiff he didn't dare to move. He turned to look at Clara, his eyes as bright as stars. "Clara, thank you for giving me such a wonderful family." Clara looked at him, laughing and shedding tears at the same time. The one who really needed to say thank you was her. If she hadn't met him, how could she have stayed away from those scumbags and obtained all these wonderful things? In the late 1980s, the wave of taking the plunge into private business began to boom. Luke, who had an adventurous spirit, asked her if she wanted to quit their jobs and go into business for themselves. Recalling how the building materials industry would explode in the 1990s, Clara immediately took out all the savings they had accumulated over the years and slapped the money on the table. Let's do it. I believe in you. After that, they opened a small building materials store. Luke did business honestly and never made dirty money. His reputation grew higher and higher, and within a few years, they had opened branch stores, making him a well-known building materials boss in the city. They moved into a spacious house and even bought a car. During this time, Clara's enemies from her past life also received their well-deserved retribution. Nora remarried an older man in the countryside, arguing every day over basic necessities. Harrison, his body ruined by severe alcoholism, passed away before he even turned 50. As for Sam, he was never promoted again in his entire life, stuck working as an ordinary laborer in the factory until he grew old. Clara no longer even cared to compare herself to them. In this life, everyone lived their own way. Their miserable lives were paths they had chosen themselves, and it had nothing to do with her. In the blink of an eye, the year 2000 arrived. Her twin son and daughter both got into prestigious universities. Her son studied civil engineering, and her daughter studied design perfectly suited to eventually take over the family's building materials business. In early spring, Clara and Luke went to the market to buy groceries. From a distance, they saw Nora squatting by the roadside selling homemade pickled melons. Her hair was more than half gray, and her back was hunched. Seeing Clara, Nora tried to hide but tripped over her own basket. Clara didn't approach her. She merely told Luke to buy a couple of pounds of the melons. When they got home, Luke smiled and said to her, "It's been so many years. Do you still resent her?" Clara leaned against his shoulder, looking at the newly washed quilts hanging out to dry on the balcony, and shook her head. "I don't hold any resentment anymore. I just find it a bit ironic. If God hadn't given me a chance to start over, I would still be lying buried in the ground by now. How could I possibly have this scene of children gathering around and my loved one by my side like I do now?" At dusk, the children called home to say they would bring their significant others over for dinner during the holidays. Clara hung up the phone. Luke had just finished stewing her favorite braised ribs, the hot, savory aroma filling the entire house. At that moment, 2 magnolia petals blew in from the window, landing gently on Clara and Luke's tightly clasped hands. Reborn into a new life, she hadn't lost to terrible people or ridiculous circumstances. She had lived the exact life she desired to the fullest, and that was enough. As for those scumbags, they could just be left to rot in the mud and fend for themselves.
What a great ending! Clara proves it's always better to be independent than to settle for less. Never lower your standards just to get married. Value yourself first. Comment below, like, and subscribe.